Let's get into some stuff we may disagree about.
All right.
Here at the end. Look, the mainstream media distorted what I had to say about 9/11. All I said was the hijackers were trained at bases in Saudi Arabia. They were allowed in, even though they were on the terrorist list. There was a clear, from my research, NORAD stand down.
There was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?
Building 7, which I'm going to show you a video of here in a moment, fell in its own footprint. They said they're bringing down Building 7. I have cops saying it, so it doesn't hurt other buildings. Why not just be honest about it? I'm not saying George Bush and Cheney had plungers, in there. I'm saying elements in different groups, clearly, just like they're using Al-Qaeda against Syria right now, just like it came out about the Olympics. I'm sure you've seen that Oscar-winning documentary narrated by Michael Douglas, where they later admit at the end of the movie that, but basically the Germans were working with the terrorists and basically let them attack as a pretext to get more funding at the Olympics back in the 70s. All I'm saying is if Gulf of Tonkin was staged, if Cy Hirsch says that the bin Laden raid is 100% fake and there's huge evidence, and I've talked to Navy SEALs families who said that their sons said it was not real, they were going to kill some body double of bin Laden. I mean, when a government's been caught lying this much, I'm not saying I know all the answers, and I know it's abhorrent and sounds horrible. I don't want to believe it either, but all I'm saying is we need to investigate all of these events and not just buy what government says at face value.
Well, I guess the last sentence, clause, don't buy what government says at face value. Of course. I mean, absolutely. And I think we have a right to know much more than we do know about everything that government does. By the way, I'd also say I'm deeply skeptical of what large organizations do, not just government. I think bureaucracy creates corruption and deception by its nature. And I'm very skeptical of the claims made by any big organization, I just don't think that, A, you're taking into account the profound incompetence of bureaucracies. Like a lot of things we think are part of a conspiracy are just like dumb moves that are made accidentally. And B, I think that if there was a mass conspiracy to kill Americans on the part of the US government, that would require so many people's involvement that at least one of them would have come forward, and nobody has. So I just don't see, I see a lot of questions, I don't see any evidence of a US conspiracy.
Sibel Edmonds was an FBI translator, and she was working up until 9/11. She said she heard elements of the CIA communicating with Al-Qaeda up until 9/11.
I'm not the only one who knows about this. Too many people know about this. The fraudulent 9/11 commissioners, every single one of them knows about my case and the details and the names and all the specifics. Several people within the United States Congress do know. Everybody in the FBI involved, they know. Everyone in Department of Justice, they know.
Colonel Schaefer, who I know you know, he contributes on Fox some, he said they could have killed bin Laden twice in the month before, or ordered not to. So I'm saying bare minimum, they want Al-Qaeda running around out there because it's a way to take our liberties here at home. Who can deny that they've used 9/11 to take a lot of liberties and now say, oh, our main mission isn't Al-Qaeda, it's the Tea Party, it's gun owners, it's returning veterans?
I don't think there's any question that crises are used by those in power always and everywhere from the beginning of time till present to increase their power, for sure. Either intentionally or unwittingly. I think a lot of these people have, clean intentions, but that's just the nature of power. It concentrates more power to itself, of course. I just don't believe that anybody at high levels of the US government in 2001 allowed 9/11 on purpose. I don't think there's any evidence for that, and I think it scares the shit out of people when you say that, and I think they have a lot of things to be scared about already, and I think that's a waste of time to go down that path. If you're looking for conspiracies, look at immigration, where the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are conspiring to bring in low-wage workers to depress American wages.
That's on record.
Exactly. That's a conspiracy. It's a real one, and it's out in the open.
Sure. All I know is that the dean of the Defense Language School, Colonel Butler, went public to AP and said, 3 of these guys were in my classes. The guys that are on the news or in my classes, something's going on. James Woods on the plane 2 weeks before. They're acting like they're hijacking, and he tells the FBI nothing's done.
I was on a flight, without going into the details of what made me suspicious of these 4 men, although it would have been blatantly obvious to the most casual observer. I took it upon myself to go to the flight attendant and ask to speak to the pilot of the plane. The first officer came out. I reported to him that I felt that the 4 men, and I said, can you look over my shoulder and see who I'm talking about? And he said, yeah. I said, I think they're going to hijack this plane. I mean, everything they're doing, and I explained to him these details, which I've been asked to keep private until whatever jurisdiction, whatever trials may take place. Their behavior was such that I felt they were going to hijack the plane. Since then, I have identified for sure 2 of them as 2 of the terrorists, who actually were not on Flight 11, but one was on Flight 175 and one was on Flight 77. And I've been told unofficially, not by the FBI, but by someone else in actually a higher level of government, believe it or not, just through a coincidence, through a mutual friend, that all 4 of them were terrorists involved.
Something was going on. And I know they had Israeli and Saudi intelligence and British intelligence following them and German intelligence.
Right.
And that all came out. The point is, this was clearly some giant multi-nation spy war game. Who knows exactly what it was? I'm just saying the stonewalling of there's nothing going on here, don't look at it. Take 6 of the 10 9/11 commissioners say that we were lied to and didn't get the official story, but then it's national security. All I'm saying is it should be looked at a lot deeper, because it was the Hart-Rubin Commission, Gary Hart, that said we're going to use this disaster for a new world order.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that anytime you have a crisis like that, people use it to their own ends. But I also think that, a lot of this is just inevitable. I know a lot of people who work in national security, and while I disagree with them profoundly on a lot of things, most of them are like decent Americans.
No, I agree, but they're compartmentalized. Let me just show you.
They are compartmentalized.
Let me just show you finally. Have you seen Building 7 collapse, the Solomon Brothers building?
No.
I want to show you that right now.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the 3rd time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Moments ago was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details.
Was this after the collapse of the other 2?
Yes, and she's saying it's fallen, Building 7.
By the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today, because of, of course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly.
They announced Building 7 fell 25 minutes before it did, and then lied and said this wasn't real, and then later admitted it. And then we have the up-close footage of CNN. Police saying, get back, they're going to bring it down.
You hear that? Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down. Building is about to blow up. Moving back. All right, guys. We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Well, pancaking almost like a precision implosion.
It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
All non-essential personnel move away from that collapse.
We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. When the Office of Emergency Management did an activation, they always included our locale. I received the call shortly after the first plane hit. I got there, I had to be inside on the 23rd floor when the second plane hit. Upon arriving into the OEM EOC, we noticed that everybody was gone. I saw coffee that was on a desk still, the smoke was still coming off the coffee. I saw half-eaten sandwiches. I'm just confused about one thing and one thing only. Why World Trade Center 7 went down in the first place. I'm very confused about that. I know what I heard. I heard explosions. The explanation I got was it was the fuel oil tank. I'm an old boiler guy. If it was a fuel oil tank, it would have been one side of the building.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
I don't want to put you on the spot here and have the black helicopters come after you, Tucker Carlson, but what do you think of that?
You know, I'm not a structural engineer. I think it's upsetting to watch it. I remember when that happened. I mean, look, I have no idea. I don't know anything. I mean, I don't understand how buildings collapse. I don't understand how Building 7 collapsed. I find it really hard to believe that the U.S. government was in league with Al-Qaeda. I just don't believe, if evidence emerges that they were, I'll be the first one picketing the White House.
What do you think of the open funding of Al-Qaeda to blow up churches and things in Syria?
You're talking about arming the Syrian rebels? I think it's completely crazy. And by the way, I think that it's tied to Benghazi. Why were there more than a dozen CIA officers and contractors in Benghazi? I mean, I think there's a lot we don't know about that, and I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but I think we ought to be really wary of people calling themselves freedom fighters. Mm-hmm. We just don't know that much about the rest of the world is the truth. We really don't. We weigh in on these things, and we don't understand the countries whose course we're influencing very well.
Well, I think we agree on one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they've certainly used this, as Rahm Emanuel said, this crisis.
Yes.
They've not let it go to waste.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
They've used all these threats.
Of course.
And no one denies that there aren't radical Muslim extremist terrorists out there. But bottom line, that threat's being used to overthrow our republic and our free system. Why not just say, hey, you want to come after us? Come after us. We'll strike back at you, not fundamentally overthrow our system.
I totally agree. What happened? I like the Rudy Giuliani September 12th posture, which was, we're Americans. We have huevos. Like, we're not going to be intimidated or afraid. That's who we are. We're not going to cower behind concertina wire. And I wish I could opt out of the system. I'm comfortable with risk. I'd be willing to take more risk in my life if I could have more choices. I would.